Markets post fourth consecutive day of fall. Sensex fall 210 points to close at 20,716 levels. Nifty ends below the crucial 6,200 levels. All eyes on RBI and Fed meet next week. Third round of 2G telecom auction to start on January 23rd. DOT invites applications from companies. Last date for submission of application by interested companies, January 4th. President Pranab Mukherjee calls public sector enterprises to increase their competitiveness to deal with market forces. Heavy Industry Minister Praful Patel says Cabinet to take up PSU autonomy shortly. And brand Mandela, the face that launched 1,000 protests, will now launch 1,000 product lines. Brand Mandela becomes big business. Lest we forget, on this very day, 12 years ago, heavily armed terrorists infiltrated the Parliament House and began firing weapons during the time of Parliament session. Special function was organized in the Parliament House premises today to pay tributes to the 8 security personnel who went down fighting the Pakistani-based terrorists that day to defend the temple of Indian democracy. Hello and welcome to DD News. I am Sidhant Sibal. On to the first top main story of the day. Friday the 13th didn't prove too lucky for the markets. It was the fourth consecutive day of fall for the market today on back of poor inflation, IP data and taper talks. Sensex ended the day 210 points down at 20,716, while Nifty lost 69 points to end at 6,168 levels. Remember, CPI inflation came out at 9-month high at 11.24% for the month of November, while IIP contracted to 1.8% in October month. Many believe hike by the Reserve Bank is now most likely. Meanwhile, in the US, the Fed could unwind the US stimulus on back of better jobs data. Here in the Indian markets, banking stocks declined on likelihood of the Reserve Bank of India hike. Capital goods also declined as higher interest rates could put a spanner. Losers on the chart were ICICI Bank, BHEL, Hero MotoCorp, Tata Power and GAIL India, which were down by between 4 to 2%. Gainers on the chart were Tata Motors, Wipro, Tata Steel, Coal India and Mahindra & Mahindra, which were up by between 2 to 1%. On to global market action, European stocks rose on Friday after a report showed US retail sales in November 2013 beat market expectations and after US House of Representatives passed a federal budget plan. Key benchmark indices in UK and Germany were up by between 0.07% to 0.16%. France's CAC 40 was flat. Asian markets edged higher in choppy trade after good US retail sales and US House of Representatives passing a federal budget plan. Key benchmark indices in Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore and Taiwan were up by between 0.12% to 0.4%. Key benchmark indices in China, Indonesia and South Korea were off by between 0.26% to 0.89%. From the last street to the main street now, a rupee ended the day at 61.12 against the US dollar. It lost 29 paise. The rupee fell on the back of inflation and IIP numbers. Remember, rupee opened the week at 60.88 against the US dollar but ended the week on a weak note. Taper talks also called weakness in the rupee. Reserve Bank has assured that the Indian economy is relatively well placed now to handle the tapering if it was to come today. The rupee had touched a lifetime low of 68.80 in August on the back of tapering fears. Overall, the market saw only one day of gains this week. Bears mauled the bulls throughout the week. Next week will be big as the Fed and the RBI meet will happen and will decide the future course of the markets. More market news in our weekly market wrap.
The week started on a positive note. It was a blockbuster Monday for the markets. Sensex hit a record high of 21,326, gained 330 points. Nifty zoomed 104 points to end above 6,250 levels. Rupee also opened on a 4-month high against the dollar at 60 rupees 88 paise. Tuesday saw dismal auto numbers. Car sales in India declined for second month in succession with an 8.15% drop in November. Sumit Bose was appointed the finance secretary. But big blow to Coal India Limited. Competition Commission of India has imposed a penalty of about 1,773 crore rupees on Coal India Limited for abusing its dominant position. But telecom stock buzzed as Mukesh Ambani-led Reliance Jio Infocom and Sunil Mittal-headed Bharti Airtel announced a comprehensive arrangement for sharing telecom infrastructure. Moving on to Wednesday, Finance Minister P. Chidambaram said that India will not compromise on fiscal prudence and will contain its fiscal deficit. Governor Raghuram Rajan said that it is dangerous to postpone bills before elections and any slippage on stalled projects will not be good for the economy. Trade deficit narrowed on falling gold and oil imports. Export rose just 5.86% to $24.61 billion in November. It was double whammy for the Indian economy on Thursday. Costlier fruits and vegetables such as onions and tomatoes pushed retail inflation to a 9-month high of 11.24% in November. Industrial production entered the negative territory after 3 months, contracting by 1.8% in October this year, mainly due to poor performance of the manufacturing sector. Meanwhile, Delhi High Court has accepted an appeal by Nokia to release its local factory after it was seized by authorities in a tax dispute, removing a hurdle to the sale of the company's mobile phone business to Microsoft. The plant in Chennai is one of Nokia's biggest phone-making factories. And on the last day of the week, that is Friday, Krish Iyer was named Walmart India CEO. Krish Iyer replaces interim CEO Ramnik Narse, who moves to Walmart International. Business Desk, DT News.
Well, that was our business this week, which tell you, the viewers, that what was the major news of throughout the week, including the big inflation and IIP data, which actually made the markets go down in the red. Now on to the markets. We'll continue with the market story. Overall, the markets saw only 1 day of gains this week. Bears mauled the bulls throughout the week. Next week will be big as the Federal Reserve and the RBI the meet will happen and will decide the future course of the market. Now in our weekly markets wrap.
The week started on a positive note on the back of election results. Sensex ended at an all-time high of 21,326 levels, up 330 points. Nifty gained 104 points to end at 6,364 levels. Rupee opened at 4-month high against the dollar at 60 rupees 88 paise, ended at 61 rupees 13 paise. But the election hangover was visible on the markets on Tuesday. Both the Sensex and Nifty ended in the red on Tuesday. Sensex fell by 71 points to close at 21,255. Nifty also fell by 31 points to end at 6,333. Wednesday, the markets fell again. The 30-share benchmark Sensex closed at 21,171, down by 84 points. Nifty also reflected the same mood and shut sharp at 6,307, down by 25 points. By the time Thursday came, it was the third day of the consecutive fall for the market. Taper worries dragged the markets. Sensex fell 246 points to close at 20,926, while the Nifty closed 71 points down at 6,237. On Friday, the markets traded in the red on the back of poor IIP data and inflation. Retail inflation came to a 23-month high. October IIP slumped to 1.8%, shrank for the first time in 4 months. And next week, key policy action by Federal Reserve and RBI on the 18th will decide the future course for the markets. Business Desk, DT News.
Well, time for a short break. After the break, news from the telecom sector and what the President said at the PUC summit in Delhi. Stay tuned.
क्या कर रहे हो? बदतमीजी मत करो, पड़ोसी देख लेंगे।
कल शाम बस स्टॉप पे
सोचूंगी, कल फोन करना। अरे बंद करो ये पागलपन, बाबूजी देख लेंगे।
बाबूजी देख लेंगे, पड़ोसी देख लेंगे। देखने दो, तो कल बस स्टॉप पे क्या बहू इतनी देर कर दी?
माँ वो
हम समझते हैं कि रिश्तों के लिए अपना घर होना कितना जरूरी है, इसीलिए बैंक ऑफ इंडिया लाए हैं आसान होम लोन्स। बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, रिश्तों की जमा पूंजी।
आज हमारा देश इतना आगे बढ़ गया है कि बाकी दुनिया की नजरों में हम एक महान देश के रूप में उभर रहे हैं, लेकिन उनका एक और नजरिया भी है हमारी तरफ। आइए उसे देखें।
What are they doing out there?
जाने अनजाने कहीं आप भी दुनिया के सामने अपने देश की ऐसी तस्वीर तो नहीं रख रहे? अपनी इज्जत अपने हाथ। जय हिंद।
अरे सुन तो।
मुझे क्या सुनाना चाहते हो? जो सुनाओ मेरी सौतन को।
किसको?
अरे वही तुम्हारा मोबाइल फोन जिससे सुबह शाम दिन रात चिपके रहते थे और कहते थे किसान कॉल सेंटर से बातें हो रही हैं।
अच्छा ये बात है।
हाँ क्यों, क्या हुआ? अब बात नहीं होती क्या?
अब तो झट से बात हो जाती है।
ऐसा क्या?
हाँ, अब तो ज्यादा लाइनें और खास तकनीक के कारण खेती के माहिरों से तुरंत बात हो जाती है। और अगर कभी लाइन व्यस्त हो तो अपनी समस्या फोन पर रिकॉर्ड करा दो, वहाँ से फोन आ जाता है और समस्या की हल का मैसेज भी आ जाता है। ये देखो आ गया।
अरे वाह, इसका मतलब इंतजार की घड़ी अब खत्म।
हाँ।
तभी मैं सोचूं कि आजकल मुझ पर इतना प्यार क्यों आ रहा है।
कृषि संबंधी समस्याओं का अपनी भाषा में तुरंत हल पाने के लिए पूरे भारत में किसी भी फोन से हेल्पलाइन नंबर पर संपर्क करें। किसानों का दोस्त किसान कॉल सेंटर।
Welcome back. On to next week's outlook. What to expect next week in Asia and around the globe. The RBI is likely to raise interest rates again in an effort to curb inflation. Meanwhile, across Asia, in China, Apple and China Mobile could finally announce a distribution deal. Fed could also announce tapering given the fact that the US unemployment has fallen below 7%.
Central banks will be taking center stage in Asia next week. On Wednesday, the man some have called the James Bond of monetary policy, RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan, will preside over the country's last policy meet for the year. Rajan is expected to hike interest rates for a third consecutive time, even as India's economy grows at its slowest pace in a decade. Policymakers have vowed to tame runaway prices, which have cost the government at the polls. Will China Mobile finally start selling iPhones later this month? Unfortunately, that's one question Siri can't answer. On Wednesday, the world's largest mobile carrier by subscribers is due to hold its partner conference in Guangzhou and will launch its new 4G service. It's also widely expected to announce a distribution deal with Apple that would give the US tech giant potential access to over 700 million customers in the world's second largest economy. Despite government efforts to cool the market, home prices in large Chinese cities have continued to scale new highs. Also on Wednesday, we'll get the latest verdict on whether the government's campaign is finally bearing fruit with the release of home prices for November. Average new home prices in China's 70 major cities in October rose a record 9.6% from 2012. On 18th, Wednesday again, the US Fed meet will end and it will be finally decided whether the US Central Bank will go unwinding of the US stimulus. It will also be the last policy meet by current Fed Chief Ben Bernanke. The next Fed meet is in Jan, headed by possibly Janet Yellen, who is dubbed as the most powerful woman in financial history. Business Desk, DD News.
On to our next story. The big date for the telecom sector has come out. The next round of the 2G spectrum auction will start on January 23rd. January 4th is the last day for submission of applications by interested companies. The last day for companies to seek clarifications on the rules stated in the notice inviting application is December 28th. DOT will hold a pre-bid conference on December 20th. Successful companies will have to pay for airwaves 10 days after closing of bidding rounds. The successful bidder will have the option to pay final price of spectrum in installments. The government hopes to garner 40,000 crore rupees from the spectrum auction. The last two rounds of the 2G spectrum auction had seen lackluster response. Meanwhile, the President Pranab Mukherjee has called for PSCs or public sector enterprises to increase their competitiveness to deal with market forces. He was addressing Global PSC Summit jointly organized by CII and the Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises. He said that management has to be of highest professional level, enabling the attainment of global benchmarks in productivity and efficiency and meeting the multiple objectives expected of a global enterprise.
The country needs a strong public sector to complement the efforts of the private industry. It underlines the need to bring in measures to strengthen the PSCs. As vital members of a thriving industrial sector, public sector enterprises must drive overall industrial and economic growth. It calls for increasing autonomy to enable PSCs to meet the demands of the market in a responsive manner.
The Minister for Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises, Praful Patel, said that recommendations of the group of ministers on PSU autonomy would be put before the Cabinet shortly for approval.
We have in the recent past appointed a committee, and that committee's recommendations have been referred to a group of ministers, which in turn has now finalized its recommendations to be now approved by the Cabinet in due course, and I would say that it would be in the course of the next few weeks that these recommendations of the group of ministers will be put up.
Time for another short break. After the break, special story on brand Mandela.
Let's go. Hey.
Dad! क्यों किया?
समझो.
जिंदगी के खेल में भी जीतने के लिए आपके लाडले को चाहिए आपकी समझ और एक भरोसेमंद साथी। LIC चिल्ड्रंस प्लान्स, जिंदगी भर जीत का वादा।
क्या आप कुछ छुपा तो नहीं रहे? प्रॉपर्टी ट्रांजैक्शन, कैश डिपॉजिट, बिग परचेजेस, परचेज ऑफ शेयर्स, बॉन्ड्स एंड डिबेंचर्स को छुपाइए नहीं, क्योंकि हम सब जानते हैं आयकर विभाग के नोटिस का इंतजार मत करिए। भरिए अपना एडवांस टैक्स ईमानदारी से इस महीने की 15 तारीख तक और बनिए भागीदार देश की प्रगति में।
Raindrops are falling on my head, जैसे कोई प्यार की फुहार छुए मुझे बहती रहे। मौसम में है रवानी, जिंदगी बनी सुहानी।
बारिश का मजा तो सब लेते हैं, पर बारिश का पानी बचाने की बात कौन सोचता है? बारिश के पानी का संरक्षण करें और जिंदगी का यूं ही मजा लेते रहें।
सोमवती, अब क्या परेशानी है?
कमजोरी है, चक्कर आता है।
वो तो ठीक हो जाएगा। अरे हाँ, तुम्हारा तो कुष्ठ रोग का इलाज चल रहा था ना, दिखाओ तो।
पूरे 3 महीने दवा खाई है।
6 या 12 महीने MDT की दवा खानी है। पूरा कोर्स करने पर ही रोगी रोग मुक्त हो सकता है। और हाँ, ये दवा तो अब हर प्राथमिक स्वास्थ्य केंद्र पे मुफ्त मिलती है। फिर देर किस लिए? MDT करे कमाल, कुष्ठ रोगी हुए खुशहाल।
कुष्ठ मुक्त भारत का सपना चलो साकार करें।
Hi, welcome back. From political posters to bottle of wines and kitchen aprons, the face and name of Nelson Mandela are a potent commercial and political brand in South Africa. We look at what changes his death will make to the legacy of Nelson Mandela.
The face that launched 1,000 protests and now it seems 1,000 product lines. Brand Mandela has become big business. So big, it threatens to overshadow the man himself.
Fame is huge, And therefore, many people are now rushing around trying to get their piece of the fame, including his own family. And it's well recorded that they're arguing, squabbling, digging up past ancestors. You know, there's a whole debate going on, which is just so sad. It's undermining the very thing that he was creating.
But it's not uncomplicated. Mandela divided management of his legacy between trusts to handle his family wealth and the Nelson Mandela Foundation. It owns copyrights to Mandela's prison number used on a clothing, wristbands and mobile phone starter packs and his main names. The Nelson Mandela Children's Fund and some 50 other institutions around the world are also authorized to use those. But a recent count showed that several dozen companies with no connection to Mandela were using that name with no permission. Many more using Madiba. Earlier this year, the South African government warned against fake charities trying to cash in on one or the other. Feuding between family members has also grabbed headlines. Mandela's friend, lawyer George Bezos, fought with two of Mandela's daughters for control of companies managing Mandela proceeds. Experts say tight legal management to nail down the intellectual property rights is a must if brand Mandela is to stay true to its origins.
You have to have very good legal advice. Secondly, you have to have a very good board of trustees, and I would be recommending a global board of trustees of great stature to prevent the squabbles that are going on between his family.
Super trustees, then, to manage what is already becoming a mega brand. Its valuation difficult to estimate, but likely to run into tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Business Desk, DD News.
Now, more stories from the business sector in our wrap. Coal India Limited is considering to challenge the Competition Commission of India's order imposing a penalty on the Coal India Limited. On Tuesday, Competition Commission of India had imposed a penalty of about 1,773 crore rupees on the Coal India Limited for abusing its dominant position. Twitter backtracks on blocking changes. Twitter has reversed changes it made to how people blocked other users less than a day after they were introduced. The changes allowed blocked users to continue to see tweets and interact with accounts that had blocked them, leading to an outcry. Afghan President Hamid Karzai, who is on a 4-day visit to India, met Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh in New Delhi today. During his meeting, both the leaders discussed about strengthening bilateral ties between the two nations. Time for repeat headlines. Markets post fourth consecutive day of fall. Sensex falls 210 points to close at 20,716 levels. Nifty ends below crucial 6,200 levels. All eyes on the RBI and third round of 2G telecom auction to start on Jan 23rd. DOT invites applications from companies. Last date for submission of applications by interested companies is January 4th. President Pranab Mukherjee calls public sector enterprises to increase their competitiveness to deal with market forces. Heavy Industries Minister Praful Patel says Cabinet to take up PSU autonomy shortly. And brand Mandela, the face that launched 1,000 protests, will now launch 1,000 product lines. Brand Mandela becomes a big business. And you can catch all the latest news from the world of politics, sports and business at DD News Twitter handle, that is at DD News Live round the clock. Well, that's all in this edition of Business Wrap. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.